Hey guys, it's Jordan with your Oakwood Student Ministry video. As always, I hope you are doing very, very well. We're going to start a new series this week called Do Something. Now to start, I want to ask you this. Have you noticed there's one category in life where if you talk about it, it just starts fights, everybody gets upset, everybody gets angry. I'm not talking about politics. I'm not even talking about religion. I'm talking about superheroes. More specifically, superhero movies. People are either on one side or the other with this. We got the Marvel crew, the DC crew who's hoping the Zack Snyder cut makes everybody happy. We'll see. Either way, I think it's because we all love superheroes that we get so invested in this conversation. In fact, superhero movies are the highest grossing movies. I mean, the MCU has hit box office numbers unseen before. Why? I think we all love superheroes because of what they do. Basically, they solve a problem. They fight the bad guys. They're brave. They do really cool stuff in the process. They see something wrong in the world and they go and do something about it. I think inside we all love that. We love the idea of doing that. Maybe we love the ideas of superheroes existing in the real world, being that hero or having somebody help us with issues we have. Like, what if Tony Stark came and rescued you out of calculus class, right? I'd be down with that. Batman snuck in and put your college application on the top of the pile. I don't know, pick your superhero, but they go get the digits from the girl you want, or, who knows, right? They help your single mom with groceries. I don't know. But we love the idea of this hero coming in, seeing a problem, and helping do something to fix it. We'd love that in our own lives. That said, that's what we're going to be talking about the next few weeks. Not Wolverine, not superheroes specifically. What we're going to be talking about is in the biggest areas of life. When we look and we see a problem, when we wish somebody would do something, we're going to be talking about things that aren't quite right in our world. We're going to be talking about injustice. Now, when I say that word, injustice, what comes to mind for you? Let's start with some definitions so we're on the same page. Justice means something that's right, that's fair, that's equal. So injustice naturally is going to be the opposite of those things. Something that's not right, it's wrong. It's not fair, it's unfair. It's unequal. This is an injustice. Not right, unfair, unequal. I probably didn't have to actually define it for you though, because as soon as I said it, something came to your mind. Maybe it was something big and global like human trafficking, racism, genocide, poverty, these big issues we have in our world. Maybe it was something really local that's just unfair and it's happening right around the corner for you. Maybe you've experienced a kind of injustice yourself, and so this is actually kind of painful to be going there right now. Maybe you've just wandered to certain sides of TikTok or the internet and you see all these issues. You're like, well, I didn't even know this was a problem, but it's a big deal. One of the things I do love about your generation, Gen Z, you guys are more aware, more attuned to injustice than really any generation I've ever seen before. And so I think it's a really cool thing. But the question is not obviously, do we have injustice? Do we face injustice? The question is, for this, my purpose is, why doesn't anybody do anything about it? If this is such a problem, we argue and we make the government the bigger stick, and it's like, why doesn't anybody do anything about it? And we still have all these problems in the world. Everybody seems to have an answer, yet we don't seem to get things done. We don't seem to stop it. So this is what we're talking about the rest of this series. What is injustice? What does it look like? Whose job is it to do something about it? Big questions, big questions. Now, as I start, I have to admit this is a tricky conversation for 1,000 reasons. But here's another one I'm going to add to it. For some of you, this does feel very heavy. And I'm hitting at a spot where this has been your world. This has been your experience for whatever reason. You or your family, your friends, you've experienced injustice. If that's you, I just want to say first off, I'm sorry. It's not right. And just so you know, this student ministry, we love Jesus. We believe Jesus says that's not right. And he speaks into the situations and he tells us to go help. So that's where we're at. This is a place you can come, be loved, be respected, and we're going to want to help you fight actual injustices that have happened against you or people you love. That's what this student ministry is, because that's who Jesus is. So if that's you, I'm sorry, but please bear with me. This is going to be good stuff. On the flip side, I know some of you, you're students, you're growing up, maybe you haven't experienced it before. Maybe you're just starting to realize, wow, this world's pretty broken. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. You never thought about it before. But things like education, racism, food insecurity, those are major issues in the world, even in our own backyard. You keep discovering new things about the world. So you're starting to ask these questions. What's wrong with this place? Why isn't anybody doing anything to fix it? Why does God allow this? Big questions we all ask as we look around this place. At your level, why are there some students that seem to never get in trouble? They do the same thing over and over. They don't seem to get in trouble, but then there's those students who do. Why is this off balance? Why is this unfair? Why is it people act like it's okay to make certain sexist jokes, racist jokes, ableist jokes, throw in whatever ist you want? Like, they make these jokes and they're cold and they're callous and they're hurtful. Why do people act like that's okay? Why does that one guy keep getting bullied? Everybody sees it, people say they don't like it, but nobody does anything about it. And what should we do about it? Why does that one person in my friend group go to a home that feels unsafe, and yet I go to a place where I don't have to worry about anything? Why do some little kids not get to eat that day if they don't go to school, while other people get 3 meals a day? Like, why? We ask these questions, and they're good questions. My point is this. When we see injustice through our own experience or somebody else's, it makes us ask some really, really tough questions about the world, about God, about ourselves. It makes us wonder how we didn't see it, how other people don't see it. It makes us wonder, do people not care? Now, I think sometimes we don't do anything about injustice because we don't get close enough to see it, to see what's really happening and ask the hard questions. So here's the big question tonight. How do we as Christians see what's wrong so we can help? And we're going to get to the helping and the doing, all right? But to start, let's go to our Bibles and answer this first question. How do we even start to see it? So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we are far from the first crew to ask this question, to worry about this. In fact, Jesus had a habit of pointing things out to people they hadn't seen before. One of the questions, though, that people asked Jesus a lot was, hey, Jesus, who's cool with you? Now, they may not have said it that way, but it's essentially what they're asking. Who's on the right side? Who's on the wrong? Stuff like that. And as Jesus often did, he'd answer questions with a story, with the narrative, with the parable to help make his point. And he'd use real-life examples in those to try to point to a bigger truth. In this case, he's going to use a story of sheep and goats to explain the difference between the righteous and the unrighteous, the right side and the wrong side. To go back to our superheroes, the good guy, the bad guy, Batman, Joker, Superman, Lex Luthor. Sheep, goats. It's where he's going with this. He's trying to make it clear there's really 2 categories here. And since flocks and shepherds were part of life in ancient Israel, he says, let's go there. You'll see this clearly. So again, the question was, hey, Jesus, who's cool with you in Matthew 25? Who's in good standing with you? Who's on the right side? Who's on the wrong? Excuse me. And in the story, Jesus says the sheep are on the right side, the righteous. The goats? Oh, sorry, goats. I got bad news. And then he addresses the goats. And this isn't like, Tom Brady goats. This is like he's talking to the people. He's saying, you're on the wrong side right now. You are not cool with me, goats. Here's why. Then he will say to those on his left, referring to the goats, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels, aka demons. That's a harsh, heavy statement. Hey, Jesus, who's cool with you? Well, there's the sheep and the goats. The sheep are righteous, the goats are not. And this is what I'm going to say to the goats. Depart from me. And the only place you're going to go apart from my presence is hell. Heavy, heavy stuff. Wow, Jesus. Why would you say that? He goes on. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison. You did not look after me. They also will answer, probably like any of us would, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger needing of clothes, or sick, or in prison, and didn't help you out? He's going to reply, truly, truly, I tell you, whatever you did not do for the least of these, whatever you did not do for other people in need, you did not do for me. Then the goats, they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. In the story that Jesus distinguishes between the righteous and the unrighteous, the good guys, the bad guys, by how they responded to the needs of others, whom Jesus defined as the prisoners, the hungry, the sick, the strangers, the foreigners. In other words, people who need the most help, people who are in the most pain, who have the worst treatment. And this might seem a little extreme, right? Jesus really saying, I'm this mad that you're going to hell because you didn't give somebody some water. It's not what he's saying. He's saying, you want to know who's with me and who's not? The people who are with me, they see this kind of stuff and they do something about it. That's going to be a mark, an identifying mark of who they are. Pastor Allen Sunday morning was talking about our love's an identifying mark. It says we're with Jesus. This is what he's saying right now. The people who don't have that kind of love, who don't see problems and try to help them, they're not with me. Because that's not how I operate. The people preying on the weak and vulnerables to get something out of it, they're not with me, Jesus is saying. But listen to the shock of the goats, the people he's talking to, and their response to Jesus the King. When did we see you? When did we not clothe you or feed you or give you water? They're saying, no, not me. I'd never do that, Jesus. And now Jesus hadn't been physically hungry or thirsty or in prison as he's talking to these guys, but he's making a point. Not only did you not see something about the injustice, or do something, not only did you not do something about it, you didn't even see it. When you don't see the people who need your help, the people who are missing justice or dealing with injustice, when you don't see it, Jesus says, I take it personally as an offense. It's as if you don't see me because I made these people and I love them. And when there's an issue and you don't do something because you don't even care enough to see it, we got a problem. And we're not on the same page, Jesus says. You're missing out on part of what it means to even follow me. Remember, again, this is a story people ask, hey, Jesus, who's cool with you and who's not? And he's very clear about his answer. He says, the people who see and act when it comes to injustice, they're cool with me. Now, I am not saying, let's be clear, I'm not saying this is how you get saved. I'm not saying this is how you earn salvation. This isn't where you start in a relationship with Jesus. He loves us while we're in our sin. That's how great his grace and love is. In fact, we only love him and respond to him and change because he first loved us despite our sin and selfishness and brokenness. That said, he says once we're in a relationship, who's cool with me, who's not, who's with me, who's not? Well, if you walk with me, he says, you're going to start seeing injustice. You're going to start doing something about it. If you follow him, you're going to begin to care about the things he cares about. And because of Jesus' example, you're going to see injustice differently than you ever had before, and you're going to be compelled to do something about it. Now, don't worry. We're going to talk throughout this series 3 more weeks about what exactly we need to do. But again, today we're just focusing on the seeing part. This is what I want you to understand. Before you even do something about injustice, you have to see it. You have to see it clearly. You have to see it right. There's a lot of voices right now in our culture shouting a lot of different things for good reasons and unfortunately for bad reasons. It's a lot to parse through. So we need to see clearly. And this is the adage I want you to understand. When you see as God sees, and Jesus is God, so when you see as Jesus sees, you'll do as Jesus does. God is perfect. Jesus is perfect. Everything he does is perfect. And so when you see as he sees, you're going to act and do as he does. When you see injustice the way Jesus sees it, you will act and do the way Jesus would. That's the point tonight. That's where we need to start. We need to be able to look around and see what's happening and see it through God's eyes. We have to notice the injustices in our daily, ordinary world. And we all have ways to grow here. So here's 3 things I want you to do. 3 things. Number 1, get close enough to see it. How do we do this? Well, a few things we can do. 1, pray. Pray that God would help you see things the way he sees them. I talk about the table analogy all the time. Spend time in prayer. Like if you want to see the world the way God does, if you want to see as he sees, so you do as he does, spend time in prayer. Spend time in his word. Spend time worshiping. To realize it's your will, not my will. You're on the throne, I'm not. I obey you, you don't obey me, that kind of thing. And then fellowship with other believers. Because hopefully the other Christians around you are maturing to the point where if you're off on this issue, they'll help you. And they'll point you to the way God sees it, and therefore what God does about it. Okay, number one, so get close enough to see. Also, spend time with people different than you. And I know I'm starting to wade into some controversial areas and people get all uppity. I don't think this is a big deal. Why not? Broaden your horizon. See different perspectives. I'm not saying different truths. I'm saying different perspectives. Often perception is reality. And so go see where people are at. You might learn something you didn't think before. We just naturally gravitate to people who are like us in our own little circle. And it keeps our world really small. Even with the internet, we find pockets of people who think like us, act like us. We say we're part of a club or a tribe. It's like, no. Just diversify a little bit. It'll be good for you. So get close enough to see. Strike up a conversation with someone in your class you don't know. Sit next to someone in the cafeteria who seems different than you. Get a job to help you meet people outside of your school. Volunteer somewhere with people different social economic classes. Put yourself on the path to interact with different people. It's only going to make you better and wiser in how you handle the issue of injustice. Rachel and I, we did a lot of world traveling, and it broadens your horizons. You see the world differently when you see it from different people's eyes. That's one way to get closer and close enough to start seeing these things better. And you can do this on your own. You can make effort on your own. Watch a movie about injustice. Again, you don't have to agree and buy everything people are saying, but just be open. Do a little research on the organizations working to help. Vet them. Have a critical eye, but also see that people are trying to do stuff. Start discovering what's going on in the world and your community. Again, you don't have to agree with everything to empathize and sympathize and find common ground. And I think sometimes we get so jaded because there are a lot of charlatans and race baiters and people trying to make a buck that we just don't even do anything. I don't think that's the issue. That's definitely not the heart of Jesus based on this parable. We need to see the problem and we need to act rightly. See as he sees, so we do as he does. The answer is not to get all, upset and say, you guys are making a big deal out of nothing and do nothing. That's not the heart of God for a second. So number one, get close enough to see. Number two, be curious enough to listen. Realize you don't know everything, and neither do I. The quickest way to see injustice is to listen to somebody else. Listen to the people experiencing it. When someone tells you about their experience of injustice, just listen. Don't just, and try to learn. Try to imagine seeing the world through their eyes, being in their shoes. Heads up, it's going to make you uncomfortable, especially if they say, they tell you something that you weren't aware of before. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was a problem. Or worse, you realize I've kind of helped make this a problem. It's going to make you uncomfortable. We have this fight or flight, and you might want to run away or get angry with the person. Don't do any of that. Just listen. Again, you don't have to agree to sit down and listen and hear somebody out. Jesus did this all the time. He obviously didn't agree with mankind in the way we do and say things, but he'd come, he'd sit, he'd listen first. Then he'd offer truth in love. At least be willing to go sit and listen before. This is something I've had to learn. Before you start trying to shout truth as if you know everything. I'm shouting his truth, but still, you got to hear people out before you even go there. And actually, just so you know, it's a good sign when bad things make you uncomfortable. So you're in good company if that happens. But it means you're beginning to see things the way God sees them. So keep listening. Keep trying to learn when you hear about injustice. Be curious, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Also be curious of your own experiences. Some of you have experienced injustice and you just brush it under the rug because, it's not a big deal. People told you not to worry about it. No, you might need to talk about that. It might be a bigger deal than you think. Or be curious about your own involvement in injustice and really question your motives, your actions. Like, am I part of the problem? In some areas, you may be. So 1, get close enough to see. 2, be curious enough to listen. Number 3, just be courageous enough to name it. Just call it out. This means if it's wrong, say it's wrong. If it's unfair, call it unfair. Sometimes we're so worried about winning an argument or making a point, we can't even see common ground. Don't do that. Don't do that. When you see injustice around you or even in you, be courageous enough to name it. Identifying injustice takes away some of its power. We can't change something we don't see, but if we call it out, we can see it. Then we can start talking about what do we actually do about it. But first, we have to see it. All right. So much of following Jesus is learning to see, think, and live the way he did, the way he tells us to. And it's not natural. But again, one of the things I love about your generation is you guys, unlike any other generation, you see this stuff. And you might be able to solve problems none of us have before. So I want to fan this flame with the wisdom and guidance of God. That's what I want to do. But be the first to step up to calling it out, to seeing it, to listening and calling it out. By the way, we're going to have small groups after this sermon, throughout this series, after the sermons, where you can discuss this, kind of vet these ideas, bounce them off each other. It's a great place. Your small group leaders love you. They want to help you do that. Last thing, as you head out, I want you to think about this quote from Maya Angelou. Again, a lot of people today, race baiters, charlatans. She's pretty cool. She's on the level. She died back in 2014, I think. Famous writer, talked about injustice. She said this: do the best you can until you know better. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And so don't be on the sidelines. Don't be passive. Try to see this stuff now, actively the way God does, the way Jesus does, and try to act right now the way Jesus would have you act. That's what this series is about. Seeing better so we can know better, so we can ultimately do better. So we'll be the sheep who are known for our love. We're cool with Jesus. He says, yeah, they're part of my crew. You can tell because of their love. And we're not the goats who he says, they don't love anybody. Clearly, they're not with me because the people who are with me, they're marked by my love. God's way is best. He cares about everyone. He cares about injustice, the inherent worth and dignity of everybody. And when you see the world and people as God sees it, you'll do what he does. And you will act to try to stop the evil in it. Okay, guys, that's the opening to the series. A lot to talk about, a lot of questions, 3 more weeks to come. I hope you'll come back. I love you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.